Blizzard conditions sweep through West Virginia this afternoon. And on the West Coast, a powerful Pacific weather system, the, 5th, 8th, 15th, who can keep track? That is creating more issues for California, Oregon, and Washington this evening. Let's take a look at that integrated vapor transport map. This is how we find the atmospheric rivers. We start out this morning, and there is the atmospheric river heading into Northern California. But as we go through the evening, it tapers off. There's the tail end across the Bay Area, shifting into Southern California for tomorrow morning, and not much left over the weekend. However, the Pacific remains active going into next weekend. Well, this looks pretty ominous. This may be heading more towards British Columbia or Washington. There's our weather picture for this afternoon. How would we characterize this? Well, for one, we have an occlusion across the northern Appalachians. We can see that snow there. That's what's prompting that blizzard warning in eastern West Virginia. We find an Alberta clipper in the northern plains, cold advection through Montana and the western Dakotas, and of course, off the left side, that's our Pacific weather system affecting Northern California and Oregon, and an occlusion just off of Vancouver Island. That's a closer look at that. For Texas and the Southwest, mild conditions. This is a modifying polar high, which is settling southward. That produced lows in the 30s all the way down to Texas. And we've got that offshore component into the Gulf. So the dew points are rather low. As we start getting the warm advection from the Gulf, as the patterns shift to the east, we will open up the Gulf and we'll see warmer temperatures and an increase in moisture. As we move up the Pacific into Alaska, we've got a large anticyclone building across Yukon, pressures up to 1042 millibars, and very cold temperatures inland. And that's driving this offshore component in the Alaska Panhandle, and that tends to be a very cold and dry pattern. We have high wind warnings in the Juneau area. They're expecting northeast winds gusting to 70 miles an hour through Saturday afternoon. Gale warnings in the southeastern Alaska inside waters, with seas up to 9 feet. The worst of it will be tonight, and then it will taper off through Saturday. Up to the north, rather quiet under the influence of that anticyclone. However, a winter weather advisory is in effect for the western coast of Alaska, from the Yukon Delta coast up to the Seward Peninsula, looking for 2 to 6 inches of snow. Then moving down into Canada, well, things are pretty busy in the western part of the country. A large area of snowfall warnings extend across the prairies from southern Saskatchewan into southern Alberta. 6 to 14 inches of snow are expected, so this is definitely not a good time to be driving the Trans-Can Highway. Wind warnings are in effect all along the British Columbia coast. This storm is less intense than what we had on Tuesday. Winds, however, will be up to 60 miles an hour. We also have problems in the Canadian Maritimes with the approach of this northeastern U.S. system. Winds will be up to 60 miles an hour from New Brunswick to Newfoundland over the weekend, with up to 2 inches of rain possible in Nova Scotia. These problems will gradually diminish going into Monday, but next weekend, another even stronger system around Saturday as a low moves up the New England coast. Pressures in that system will be down to 970 millibars. So now that we have the lowdown on what's happening, we take a look at the jet stream level chart, and we see it is broken up into a couple of closed lows, one off of the northwest coast and the other in the northeastern states. The polar front jet rounding those features about like that, and we've got 145 knot winds off of North Carolina. Some ridging in between across the central states, and that's producing some rather fair weather. Down to the south, This is probably a subtropical jet. Haven't really looked at that in detail. And the polar front jet itself broken up into a couple of different speed max areas. This one coming into Northern California, producing some of the inclement weather we have this evening. We can take a look at the dynamics with the 500 millibar heights and vorticity. We see the flow in the western U.S. is rather channeled. So that's going to be the polar front jet. Don't see any distinct areas of positive vorticity advection. This is mostly a uniform vorticity pattern elongated with the height lines. And that means that there's probably not much in the way of concentrated upper level lift. A little bit different out in the eastern U.S. That is a strong advection lobe off of the east coast. So that represents a massive area of PVA out ahead of it and NVA behind it. We're referring to positive vorticity advection, which is associated with upward motion, and the opposite for the negative vorticity area right there. That's subsidence. It's not to say you can't get precip back there. We definitely have some here. That's partly due to the wraparound of moisture and the very steep lapse rates in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. That'll get you the convection going, and that's what we have there. So probably a decline in that precipitation going into the nighttime hours. Broad area of ridging in the central U.S., and we'll just take a quick peek going into tonight. Okay, that's going to be a shortwave moving into California overnight, and going into the afternoon, that tracks into Idaho and northern Nevada. So that'll represent an increase in the precipitation activity and maybe some pressure falls as that moves along the frontal boundary. Now, I don't expect all of you to follow everything that I'm doing here. This is partly so you can check out your favorite area. You may not be interested in what's going on out west, but if you're in Chicago, you'll probably follow along and maybe apply some of these same methods to what you're seeing in your neck of the woods. Another way we can follow what's going on is with the 850 millibar chart. This gets you about 1.5 kilometers off the ground, up to about 5,000 feet. And we see that large area of, well, I'm not going to call that cold air advection. I mean, take a look at these isotherms. -4, that's the cold pool, centered over New York and Scranton and Binghamton, and up to the north, -2 coming in, and 0. So as you go northwest, it gets warmer, which is very unusual. So you got to be careful not to just go back to your old habits and say northwesterly flow, that's going to be cold air advection. No, this is warm advection. So you got to kind of watch that. And right here, that's where the cold advection is located, the upper level low. And since we have warm advection in the lower levels, that is going to support upward vertical motion. So that's helping also, along with the convective processes, to get that blizzard activity going in West Virginia. On the west coast, a couple bands of strong winds, one around Quileute on the coast there, and this zone of 35-mile-an-hour flow into the Bay Area. And that's right about now. And you can see as we go into the nighttime hours, that shifts down the coast towards Monterey. So gradually this inclement weather will shift further and further south. And it'll impinge on the Sierras just a little bit further north. But gradually that will taper off tonight. Then the rest of the weekend looks like a low-level jet getting established in Oklahoma and the northwest Texas area by Sunday. 45 knots there, but that is going to be tapping dry air from Mexico initially. All right, let's take a look at the region by region. This is the northeastern U.S. There's the upper level low, right around the Catskills, and the warm conveyor belt is offshore, and that's where we find the baroclinic low. The cold fronts, the warm fronts all out there, and the occlusion arcing back towards that vortex. And of course, on the backside, the warm advection coming in. So that's going to be a mixture of stratocumulus, nimbostratus, stuff like that. Let's put that upper level map on there. We can do that on the College of DuPage site. Some very neat tools here. That's going to be right there. So there we can visualize that 500 millibar low. And we can see that that warm conveyor belt is rather close to that polar front jet, which is well off of the northeast coast. Temperatures across the northeast surprisingly mild. 40s just about everywhere, with 30s in the mountains. Yesterday we saw over an inch of rain in the Hudson River Valley of New York, around 1.5 to 2 inches around New York City. Further to the west in Ohio, we had about 2 inches of snow in Cincinnati and Dayton, 3 inches at Indianapolis. There's a quick check of the hazard areas. The winter weather advisory is expiring, but in the Catskills, we do have this winter storm warning that runs until 1 a.m. Another winter storm warning south of Scranton, and this is the blizzard warning. That'll give you a closer view of exactly where that is. That's going to be east and south of Elkins. Surrounding that, another winter storm warning, and further south we find winter weather advisories all down the Appalachians into the Blue Ridge Mountains. Fair weather across much of the southeastern U.S. There we do have cold advection in place. The main problem areas are along the Blue Ridge Mountains, where we have that winter weather advisory in effect. 50s for highs have come as far south as Jacksonville, Montgomery, Jackson, and Little Rock. The high temperature today only around 49 at Raleigh, 51 at Nashville, and 51 at Memphis. Freeze warning tonight through much of central Alabama and Mississippi, including Montgomery, Birmingham, and Jackson. Temperatures will drop to 30 degrees. Now, at the very beginning of the satellite loop, we start out in visible. As we go into nighttime, we switch to infrared. And these low clouds, they become very difficult to find because they are very close to the temperature of the ground. And again, that's where you can use the NT nighttime microphysics, and that really brings them out. So, yeah, you can definitely find those low clouds even at nighttime. It definitely shows up there in Kentucky, northern Tennessee. Typically the yellows and cyan colors, those are going to be the low clouds. The high clouds, they tend to show up as purple. And to get those products, if you're on the College of DuPage site, you're going to scroll down to NT Microphysics in the satellite product viewer. If you're on the NESDIS GOES image viewer site, you're going to go to this day-night cloud micro combo, and that gives you essentially the very same thing. In the southern plains, fair skies just about everywhere. Mild conditions, lows in the 30s and 40s, but temperatures shooting right back up into the 60s and 70s. In the northern plains, a different story. Rapidly transition to cold air. Up there in North Dakota, highs continue to be in the 20s and 30s, and it will stay that way for the next week. In fact, it will get even worse. We'll show you that shortly. Down to the south, though, 40s in Iowa, South Dakota, and 50s as you get into Nebraska and Kansas. In the southwest, heat has returned to the lower deserts, up to 84 at Tucson this afternoon, 82 at Phoenix, and of course to the northwest, that Pacific weather system we were talking about. So earlier I showed you the atmospheric river charts, and I'm going to show you the conventional surface charts now. So there's that band of rain and showers moving into Northern California, continued unsettled along Victoria Island. And we go into the overnight hours. A lot of this precip moving inland and affecting northern Idaho and western Montana. Things quiet down a little bit going into the weekend. Another band of showers comes onto the northwest Pacific coast. California looking a little bit better until Monday. This new weather system right here moves onshore, and you can see this band of frontal precipitation moving into California. And this is going to be the remainder of the period. For those of you that want to check out your favorite area, you'll notice the appearance of this large Pacific anticyclone that'll tend to suppress a lot of the weather going into next week. California remaining a little bit active. However, these atmospheric rivers trying to get started way out there in the central Pacific, and that's going to be the very last frame. So towards the extended period, looks pretty good. But of course, we'll have to keep an eye on what is going to be coming the first week of December. Let's go ahead and look at the hazards. Southern California, no problems. Mount Charleston, west of Las Vegas, high wind warning late tonight through Saturday. Southwest winds gusting to 60 miles an hour. That's mostly above 4,000 feet. Wind advisory in the Las Vegas basin all the way out to Pahrump. They're looking for south winds gusting to 50 miles an hour through all of Saturday. Then we get to the Sierras, and yeah, that's going to be our winter storm warning. That runs the entire weekend all the way till Tuesday afternoon. Heavy snow above 6,500, looking for 10 to 24 inches of snow. That includes the northern Owens Valley, Mono Lake, on up into Lake Tahoe. High wind warnings until late tonight for western Nevada, including Reno, Carson City, and Hawthorne, gusts to 65 miles an hour, peaking this evening. Flood watches all across the northern San Joaquin Valley. Looks like they've included Sacramento just in the past several hours, but they have pulled those back for the northwestern California coast, then going further north into Oregon. These are wind advisories that are expiring this afternoon. We still do have high wind warnings along the coast, basically from Florence to Newport, Astoria, and South Bend, winds 60 miles an hour. Wind advisory for tonight in the Seattle-Tacoma area, southeast winds gusting to 45 miles an hour. And up in northern Montana, winter storm watch for late tonight into Saturday. Around Cut Bank, looking for 2 to 6 inches of snow, and winter weather advisories from today into tomorrow. Light mixed precipitation early on, and then snow for tomorrow. So let's put it together and go through the forecast products. Starting out with tonight, a reinforcement of cold air in the Dakotas. Highs will be in the 20s tomorrow in almost the entire state. 30s for Minnesota. Continues to warm up in Texas. We can see the onshore flow starting up. Of course, we mentioned earlier the low-level jet also trying to get established. So this is going to be a return to mild weather. 70s everywhere in Texas except along the Red River. Snow showers continue out west as this front continues to move inland. This is a typical antifront setup, and with that we find the precip mostly to the west. Then we go into Sunday. A burst of cold air moving through Montana into the Dakotas. Down south in Texas, this will be one of the warmest days of the week, up to 79 at DFW, 83 at San Antonio. Widespread snows continue through the northern and central Rockies. Snow showers through the Intermountain regions. Snow showers continue on the Sierras as well. Rains, once again on the Pacific coast. Then we go into Monday. Cold advection filtering down through the Central Plains. This is how it looks around noon, so this cold front sweeping south very quickly, reaching Texas during the afternoon. It will be bitterly cold in North Dakota. We start out with some of the first sub-zero temperatures. It will be -4 at Cut Bank, Montana. Highs will be in the teens, 19 at Bismarck, 15 at Minot. Grand Forks, I think we have one viewer there at least, looking better at 26. Rains develop across the Great Lakes area with snow in northern Wisconsin. A dry cold front sweeps through Texas, not much precip along that. And a low-level jet tries to get established in the Mississippi River region, so we could see a few showers and maybe even a couple of thunderstorms there. Typically, this is not a favorable pattern for thunderstorm activity. Snows continue in the western U.S. Sub-zero temperatures once again in Montana and North Dakota. Tuesday looking like this. Rains and snows all across the west once again. A weak atmospheric river may affect parts of Southern California for a couple days. As we go into Wednesday, it looks like this, unsettled across the Four Corners and Great Basin area. Snow spreads into Nebraska, Kansas from the west. Then we go into Thanksgiving. Looks dry across much of the country. Showers in the southeastern U.S. and the central Gulf Coast. Maybe some snow along Interstate 40 around Amarillo. But the rest of the country looking dry, and a reprieve in the western U.S., except maybe on the central California coast. Then the rest of the period looking cooler and drier just about everywhere. The exception in the southwestern U.S., where we have warm advection, and that'll produce kind of a showery, mild pattern in that part of the country. And that'll be the last frame we have, cold out east and mild out west. And I hope you have a great weekend. Give you a chance to rest up before the holidays start up. They're just about here. Take care, and we'll see you back here on Monday for the supporters, and on Wednesday for everybody else. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.